You good?
Yeah.
All right. Recognition of the open meetings law. There's information on the wall. If there's any questions, you can ask. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Laura? Yes.
Okay, next item is the approval of the minutes. Since we had a couple of people absent from the one, let's take these in two parts. The September regular meeting minutes, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion is second, any discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Mike?
Yes.
Brett? Laura? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes. And then the September budget meeting minutes, is there a motion to approve? Motion is second,
Second.
any discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Brett?
Yes.
Laura? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Next item is approval of the claims. You've got two sets of claims there. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
There's an SF.
Yeah.
2000.
Yep. Okay, is there a motion to approve all but the word comp claim?
So moved.
I'm sorry. Hang on, give me just a second.
You go to the first second. You're on the second.
I'm sorry. Yes, there are. Okay, is there a motion to approve all of the claims except for word comp and ED lawn service claim?
Second.
Motion is second, any discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Laura? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the ED lawn service claim?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Brett?
Abstain.
Laura? Yes.
Okay, and the word comp claim? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, any discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Brett?
Yes.
Laura? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Abstain.
Okay. Next item is the treasurer's report. Various items of information from the administration. Is there any questions from the board? Okay. Moving on to, let's see, policy review, Brandon, we'll do later in the action items. Next item is the administrative reports, and Mr. Kreifel.
All right, good evening, everybody. My report is attached there. So, a couple of things. There's 3 things on there that are kind of just updates from what I reported on last month. The first one is just an update on our working agreement with ESU2 for social emotional support. Our new therapist, Lauren Edgecombe, has started, and we're just really happy with that working relationship and how it's going so far. So, we were able to offer 7 more slots for students whose parents give them permission to have therapy services at school. And she's just definitely kind of become part of our staff and is just really available and visible to kids when she's in the building. In Head Start, probably the biggest update is that we did start having our in-person policy committee meetings. They haven't been in person for a few years because of COVID and regulations and things in Lincoln, but Allie Klein organized the first one of those meetings for us, our policy committee. Last month, she did forget to invite Brett, but we got that fixed so that you were in the loop again, Brett. And so that we didn't do too much last month, but we'll meet again in December, and that will be more important because we're doing a complete policy review. And then with English language arts, we talked about that curriculum adoption, how that's going. It's definitely still a lot of planning time for the teachers, but it's going very well. Actually, with Josh's help, we've worked with the ESU. So Karen Zitlow is our lead professional developer for the ESU, and she's our liaison. So she's coming in and doing coaching and helping teachers with planning that. And she's just echoed all the same things that Curtis Carlson and I are seeing and saying, is that it's going really well. Our teachers are doing excellent work with it. And actually last week she emailed me and asked if a neighboring district could come watch our teachers with it because they're doing so well. So a lot of effort, a lot of hard work, but it is already starting to pay off. And then just wanted to highlight what our PTO is doing for us. They paid for a wildlife encounters assembly, so we're back into the groove of getting through those fun extra things now with some of those restrictions lifted from COVID. So we had an assembly last week. Alex was the watchdog, so he got to be there. And then I was really thankful too because we had volunteers from PTO come help supervise, so that in addition to me and Mr. Carlson and some of our staff, then our teachers were able to go utilize that as extra planning time for report cards and the new curriculum, so that it was kind of a 2-for-1 on that. So we were happy with that. Finally, at the end of my report, most months I like to highlight staff members who are doing an exceptional job. And this month, I wanted to recognize Angie Day. She's over as our district kitchen manager in August. And things in the elementary have gone really, really well. We're all new staff again this year, so just really thankful for her. And Stacy Simonson, as you know, she's our art teacher, but she's also one of our WEPS coordinators, and she just continually impresses me with how well she handles sometimes difficult conversations and how we can support our kids who sometimes struggle academically. So I just wanted to highlight that those two are definitely going above and beyond. Any questions?
I don't have one question, more of a comment. Just my time down there with wildlife encounters, I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things, but the teachers, the staff in general seem terribly upbeat and just thrilled. I never thought at some point I would be just walking through the halls and through the classrooms. Things are awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to get to do those extra things again, you know, and so we're gonna be able to have grant days again this year. We've been able to do that for a few years, and we already have grant camp planned, so it's fun to film on.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Shelley?
Good evening. You have my report here. The only thing I wanted to highlight was Chris and I have been working on final financials and just want to thank her for all she does with that. I don't know what I would do without her. Any other
There's a lot of people who feel that way.
questions?
10 years.
Is she red? I can't see her.
Turning that way.
Yes. Any questions?
Any questions for Shelley? Or Chris? All right, thank you, Shelley. Mr. Berry, I believe, is supervising this evening. Do you have his report? Any questions for anybody on that? Okay, Mr. Kaminsky.
Just wanted to highlight some things in our report, my reports. Just a lot of awards that were given out. We got student council members we did a lot of campaigning last month. We got new student council. I have some pictures on there for you. One thing I did want to point out in my report is the newsletter. I did it a little bit differently. I think I've done it differently every year because I was trying to figure out what to do. But I ended up doing a web page, Google web page that just kind of update it throughout the year. I think that'll be a little bit more efficient than what I have been doing the last couple of years. So I'll send that out a lot frequently to our parents and guardians and just updating some of that stuff. But again, just things I've highlighted in my report. So if you have any questions.
Okay, any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. All right, Josh.
You have my full report there. A few things to highlight. 10th graders will begin fall pre-ACT testing next week. That will run for a couple of weeks. Pre-ACT is a little bit more relaxed from the state's standpoint, so we can use it instructionally. Whereas the ACT, when they take it as a junior, is very much a summative kind of snapshot. We don't get results real in a timely fashion. But pre-ACT, after I submit those, middle of November, we should have them back within a week, maybe 10 days tops. And then teachers get access to that information. So they'll start testing with that next week, so a communication will go out this week to families, just to give them a heads up. That testing takes place in the classroom during their math, science, or reading block. So it's not something that's to disrupt the entire schedule of the school to accomplish, and allows us to do it a little bit more, say like a laid back kind of fashion, more general to what the classroom instruction model is like. Perceptual surveys went out. If anybody's listening out in virtual land, I apologize. A couple of the links were inaccurate. I think I caught it within about 5 minutes and stopped those and reset the second one with a note at the top that says with corrected links. So that was just for the middle school and high school links. So those family perceptual surveys went out today. They'll stay open for several weeks. I'll send a follow-up next week just to give people another opportunity if they missed it. We use that information for part of our continuous improvement process, part of our accreditation process with the state as well. So generally we do it every 2 years within a 5-year cycle. So we collect the information twice during that 5-year window. PD's coming up on Thursday. We've got a lot of stuff, training for around our instructional model, our elementary reading program, some gap analysis work, and I'll share some information about pre-ACT and ACT data here. But we take that pre-ACT and ACT data at the classroom level and start looking for gaps, things maybe that are areas of strength, areas of improvement, and then use those to fine-tune the instructional program that kids are receiving. So sometimes the information might be glaring, and sometimes it might be a little less obvious. Just because it shows something doesn't necessarily mean we abandon everything that we're doing, but at least we consider the results. And I'll share some of those results here shortly. ESUCC had some additional funds available, so in consultation with elementary with Mr. Privet and also with our middle school science teachers, we were able to secure over $8,000 in grant funding for some additional robotics components. So there's some classroom-based sets that they'll be using in the middle school. At the elementary, some things that they'll use during library media time. And then also we secured a 6 drone, it's a drone unit with 6 kind of small individually controlled drones, and then a kind of a cage that you fly them in. If you've ever seen those competitions where they set up an obstacle course within a cage. So the cage came with that too. So all total, a little over $8,000 worth of funding there. That stuff should start showing up here within the next few weeks. So very, very appreciative of that. And then next week, October 27th, we have our Space in the Community event. It'll be held in the High School Performance Learning Center. That's from 6:30 to 8:30. So we've got community is welcome. Everybody's welcome. We've got posters up around town. I'm hoping that we'll get some more of those out. Susie Nelson at the newspaper is going to run an article in the paper this week, so that'll get out there as well. So, but I shared with Saunders County Catholic Schools as well, and they're going to promote it internally within their newsletters and things also. So hopefully we can get a good turnout there. And then on the 28th, so with that we have a retired astronaut coming who actually was part of one of the last missions that went up and worked on the Hubble telescope. So he'll be here 2 days, the 27th and 28th, and then on the 28th we'll have some small breakout sessions with 5th, 7th, and 9th graders, and then also classroom visits and presentation with all students at the elementary, and then all students at the, obviously, do the community night at the high school. And that's it. And then I'll put some data up here, unless you have some questions. I'll tinker with this if you
Any questions
want to ask.
at this point for Josh?
Yeah, Josh, I do. It's come to more fruition for me because I have a kid now looking at schools. So we went to a visit today again. And they asked not a word about ACT. And then we said, well, what about his ACT score? He says, well, what he gets, we said what he got. He goes, is there any money we take it against it? No, it's GPA. So who is actually using the ACT? Universities?
some,
They're not much anymore. 'Cause
not all. So there is, in Vernon, if you want to chime in as well, but there has been a shift to go away from the practice of using that as as a sole entrance piece. It's not consistent. I mean, it's not like everybody's doing the same thing, but it's trending that direction.
So we use it more for a measuring stick, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
So if you're a
required.
good test taker,
It's
we do
required
better,
for the
we do
state.
better.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Okay.
It's our state requirement for
That's why
high school now. I mean, which they changed, about 4 years ago,
Right,
so.
2016, 17.
okay.
So that contract was just renewed recently. I don't know. There is some shakeup in the assessment department, some things moving around right now at the Department of Ed, so I'm not sure.
Because the big thing I hear
That
is
could
GPA.
change.
That is everywhere I've gone, GPA.
Are these all small schools, Mike?
For the most part, a couple of Division II, but the one's a private Division II. That's why I was curious on the state stuff, universities and all that. That's different, because I don't know that, because my son's not looking at anything like that. But it was interesting. Everywhere we've gone, it's said the exact same thing.
But just so I'm clear, like, prior to the state requiring that we administer this to our students as part of the state assessment, we didn't require anything with the ACT.
No,
Take it or don't take it.
correct.
But then the state came in and said, thou shalt take. So we
Correct.
follow, and all of our students take it
One time.
once as a junior.
That is accurate, free of charge, yeah.
But what the colleges do is what the colleges do. I mean, we don't have.
Right, but are we pushing kids to take it a second and a third time?
We offer, I mean, we host.
That's on their dollar then.
Yeah, it's on their dollar, and it depends on what they're looking to do, because there's absolutely places where 2 or 3, 4 points, depending on what would change the money.
Totally get it. If that's the merit basis, yes, I get it. But we're not telling a kid to take it again if they're not planning to use it at a place that can give additional academics. Okay.
Well, the challenge is for kids, though, that don't know exactly where they want to go. And for some of those kids, and they might need it for some of the places that they're looking, and they might need it for some of the places they're not. It can still possibly open some opportunities.
Well, here's the deal. I'm a senior as a parent. I should be better, more proactive. I never knew this existed. That ACT didn't affect anything, and with NAI in certain private Division II schools that we're looking at. I mean, that's something I didn't know, and I didn't know if that was common.
It's really been a shift in the last year or two.
Okay.
I mean, it's really been just a new thing that's kind of come up. And some of it's been I think some smaller schools trying to get more kids to enroll. I think they've tried to open it up with different things and not worry as much about one test as opposed to a variety of things that they're looking at now.
And is that information you're sharing with parents and students who are preparing for college to say, here's what the trend is, here's what you're going to experience as you're going out looking for colleges?
I would say Mr. Harris meets probably and sets up a plan with all those students individually. I don't know if there's a meeting where we go through and talk just specifically about an ACT, taking tests, but all of those things we're supposed to go through. And there are certain kids that I've talked to about where they're going to, on what individually matters to them.
I guess I've been thinking more along your lines, Mike, as a parent.
Well, we're in a situation with, I'll use my son, because I don't care if he's here or not. He's borderline to get more money. So most guys by the seniors should be kind of cooling down, just kind of get all the, he's got to buckle down more than ever, because if he gets just a little more, there's a lot more money there on that GPA. And I did not know that. I always thought it was ACT, and now everywhere. I mean, we're looking at different, obviously, going to Nebraska University system, there's still ACT, there's like Regents and all that, is that based on ACT? Regents and all that, yeah, so they're still out there. But I'm just saying, as a parent, I wasn't aware of it. Now we're watching it like a hawk, saying, hey, you get this much closer, you get this much more money.
Every one
GPA.
Every one of those schools have a different sliding scale a little bit. Usually, in most places, it's in unison with your GPA. Like if your ACT scores here, your GPA is here, and it kind of shifts depending on where you're at. But not everybody is that way.
Yeah, the GPAC school, I know that for a fact, and a couple of the ones up in South Dakota,
And
GPA
some
only.
separate those.
Yeah, there's no- they're not sliding.
That will say either or, right?
Right.
ACT is this, we'll give you this. GPA is
To
this.
answer
we'll
Renee's
give you this.
question,
It makes
that's
no
what
difference.
Renee's question was getting at is, I'm moving forward, because this has changed fast.
But, so John Harris always does an educational session about financial planning and such, and maybe it's just something where
We'll
there
add
can be
into that.
some educational component about trends in college admissions and scholarships.
Because that truly is, like you just said, it has really changed.
Yeah, and the challenging part, like was mentioned, is every institution is completely different, and some of them set their own guide, their own. I think, but just being aware of that practice,
Right.
and if, a student doesn't know where they want to attend school, then it makes it, makes it more challenging.
Yeah, 'cause we sat there today, and the question is, I asked, I said, so if he bumps his ACT up 3 points, does he give, and she said, no. She flat out said, you don't need to take it again. And for him, he's like, all right, I'm done with it. But for us, she said, she goes, looking at GPA, yeah, he gets up to here, you get this. So I think it was eye-opening for a first-time parent going through it.
And that's what I'm saying, I think that communication is important, not because you can say, here's the schools that require it, here's the ones that
Right.
don't, but look at what your students, the options before them, ask the question, how important is GPA? Do you require ACT? And not only having those meetings, but making sure we're communicating through multiple channels for the parents who can't be there, whatever it is.
He does, he always sends out emails.
Perfect. Yeah, I just haven't been through the high school, so, but just making sure parents are on.
For our senior kids, like FAFSA, there's been stuff that we've had a work session, we've had kids come in with,
Oh, yeah, that's all.
John sends out a lot of different things to kind of add to that as your kids get older with that, but I don't think it's bad to add extra things in there too.
Josh, I had just a couple of follow-up questions. One, on the pre-ACT stuff, is that information immediately going home to parents?
Yeah, so I send out the information to parents right away. We'll say scores have returned. The students pick up their actual test booklet, their actual answer selection, their actual scoring document. So all of that stuff goes home. I keep a copy on file here just in case a parent, it's nothing to have a parent say, can you print me another copy of whatever that is, and I'll send that. So that's very helpful. And then I meet with all the 10th graders at that time and go through, ACT has some support resources where they can go in and enter the results from their pre-ACT in. It'll create like a study path for them if they're a student who's looking to improve their ACT scores. So we do a few things there with all of them when those scores come back. So teachers see kind of the item analysis, how did they do on each question, use that to make a plan or make adjustments if they need to, and then the kids get their actual tests, so their booklet, all the notes that they took, any of that. So.
And then on the space presentation, foundation, education, any particular reason you're doing 5th, 7th, and 9th only?
Yeah, so alignment with state standards was really stronger in those grade levels, and then we thought we would hit a middle school, high school, and an elementary target classroom there. They can only accommodate so many people, so there was no way to do everybody. But in talking to teachers, those were the grades that everyone felt pretty good with. The thought is, and the hope is that this will continue. So it may not look the same next year. We may not do anything with those 5th, 7th, and 8th, or 5th, 7th, and 9th. But they'll be coming on. They'll be willing to come on campus and do some other activities. We just may not do a big community night anyway. So this is all. In response to a private donor who came forward and had a chunk of money that they would like to donate towards just STEM education, and they really let us navigate with where we wanted to go with that. So, all right, I do have some data for you. ACT and pre-ACT, we do have results of the 21-22 ACT scores. However, they're still embargoed. The state will keep, sometimes it's late November, sometimes it's December, sometimes it's January. The hope would be that at least by the time the community data report comes out in January, that all of that would be not embargoed. So we're able to share it internally within the school. Parents have results and those types of things, score reports and whatnot, but we don't have, we're not at liberty or at least able to share publicly yet. So you'll see that those things are covered on the presentation. So the state mandated test, it's a state mandated test for 11th graders that began in 16-17. We do administer paper pencil in the spring, and then classroom teachers provide practice test opportunities for students periodically. So they try to give them a few ideas of kind of what pressures or stresses it might feel like, what's the timing like. So they share a little bit of that throughout the course of the year, just to help them kind of feel what that might feel like as they move forward. So in terms of, this is just information for you, but the score interpretation, there's really kind of two benchmarks that we look at. The ACT benchmark is what they call college and career ready. So you'll see the low end there, 22 for math, 20 for ELA, and 23 for science. Even though the ACT breaks the test out into math, reading, English, and science, the State Department has combined reading and English into one category, ELA. So that's where that ELA comes from. The students, however, when they get their results back, will have a math, reading, English, science score. And then from the state level, they'll also have an ELA score. So it's kind of it's not, I can't say it's an average, but the reading and English components factor inform that. And then on track, 18, 18, and 19 for those same math, ELA, and science. So what they're saying here is that the ACT benchmark meets expectations. This comes from ACT. They're saying students have at least a 50% chance of a B or better and 75% chance of a C or better in a first-year related content course. That's at a university or a post-4-year institution, 2-year or 4-year institution. On track says they're likely to have access to those credit-bearing courses first year. So when, as they're entering into post-secondary, that they're going to have a really good chance of being able to stick with it. I'll just be honest with you, obviously we know there's lots of other factors that go into the, a student's readiness and willingness to stick that out, parental support, home life, ability to come back to the high school that they graduated from and ask for advice. I mean, we have students in the summertime I know who are communicate with our teachers, about courses that they're taking in college. So those lines of communication are still open, which is really awesome when I see our kids come back and ask some of our teachers about things that they're doing currently in college, which means that we've been doing the right things, developing those relationships. So when we look at our ACT, average ACT score, this is the composite. You'll see, again, just for 11th graders. Over the course of the past 3 years, 3 years that the assessment was given. So 1920, the COVID year, there is no data for that year. You'll see this state average in blue and the district average, or state average in red, sorry, and the district average in blue. So when we, as a staff, this, what I'll say now would apply to all of the next slides, but when staff look at this, we look at, our average compared to the state average, trends in dip, if there's things that might impact like that 1920 year, there's a lot of talk about how it's drastically impacted student learning. And then we look at, how far the state average dropped compared to maybe how far our average dropped. So we try to compare some of those things to, I don't know, maybe look at association, not necessarily causation, but just something that is, something that we might be able to grab onto with that might make sense of where we're at. So we've been very consistent in that, low 20s. Yeah, no data for the COVID year. ACT math. Try not to skew the scale. So on the left-hand side, it is 0 to 36. So you'll see that our distance between the state is growing here. So this breaks it down a little bit further. So when you look at ACT math average, so on the left-hand side, I included for you just the percent proficient. So this is the on track threshold that NDE would say. So, you know, we're at, you know, right around 60% on track or at that 18 or above. And then when we look at that meeting college and career readiness benchmark in math, that score of 22 or above, you'll see the shift in those numbers. I don't have state numbers for I can get state numbers for the college and career readiness, but I cannot for whatever reason, right? Maybe in a few days I can find that, but as of now it's been crickets in terms of what do the state numbers look like for the on track performance. I don't know why that is. I can't answer that question. And then we look at science, again, very, very strong there. And then same, so you'll see that percent proficient, strong 60%. Trending, this last year we trended up as well. So I can't show you those numbers, but it's very strong. And then on the right-hand side, obviously that's that 23 or above compared to the state average of 23 or above. And then ELA, again, you know, you'll see the gap widening for us as well compared to the state, the composite. And just a disclaimer at the top again, NDE combines that English and reading into that ELA score. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see that score of 19 or above. When we have our SIT meetings in the summer and we do our data, this is one of the big reasons too why you see at the high school our continuous improvement goals reading. So you know if I scroll back and you'll see you know mid 60% at that 19 or above, that on track level for science. You know 60% as that on track level for math, and then when we look at ELA or reading, you know more. It's one of the areas that we have probably more room for improvement. So one of the areas that we're focused on. Any questions about any of that?
I think more just the big picture question of the news in the last few weeks. There's been, or the last few days, maybe not weeks, there's been comments that Nebraska scored the lowest that they've scored in the last 10 years. I'm just curious if there's any big picture takes on that from your standpoint.
Internally, our scores have not adjusted enough with reflection of that to say that there's any concerns. Even the 21-22 data that I can't show you right now shows, I mean, even going back as far as I can with regards to this, not a lot of variation in our scores in any of those content areas. So while that was reported at a big level, we're not seeing that here.
Any professional takes on why they're seeing that at the state level?
I mean, I could speculate that it had to do with how, you know, fast students were able to get back to classrooms and you know, obviously larger school districts impact that average greater than we do. And some of the larger districts in the state, you know, had, I would say, probably not as consistent attendance rates, even when we came back in 21-22 and had students, you know, on campus, you know, in a safe manner. They were getting face-to-face instruction while lots of other places were still doing remote learning or hybrid settings where students were coming to campus 2 days a week and were online 3 days a week and shifting those schedules. And so I would say the consistency of that, you know, that plan that was enacted several years ago is definitely not hurt where our students are at right now.
I think you raised an interesting question. While we're comparing us against the rest of the state, I'm curious where we sit against national average. Do you have any idea?
Not right off, no, but I can.
I'm just wondering.
Well, and the other thing that's tough when you go to the national average is in Nebraska, all of our juniors take the test, whether you're in the workforce workforce kid, or whether it's a four-year track for university type, every single student takes an ACT. Not every state operates that way.
There's not a lot of states that do fall under that category. There's several, but not a lot.
Is that test a rough measure for learning throughout the course of high school?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about it as a staff, we talk about it as a reflection of K-12, or K-11. You know, when you look at success on an ACT, a lot of it is the ability to read. I mean, even though the math test is assessing math skills, it's still a lot of reading. When we talk to our science teachers about the science ACT, there's a lot of math that's associated there. So it's not just science, it's interpretation of charts and graphs. It's the ability to, use an equation and find an answer to something that's located there. So when we see all those pieces, we try to look at it as more than just a snapshot, more than just this is a reflection of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, because a lot of those foundational reading skills and things that students are developing along the way, 6 through 8, or even in the upper elementary, are things that help influence their ACT score.
I think you said in the summer when you meet that reading component, ELA, trying to raise that as part of the goals. What exactly are we doing to try to raise that? Can you just give me some?
Yeah, so the new reading materials that were selected at the elementary will have an impact on that. We're doing the same. We're following that same process at 6 through 12 right now with our ELA department. So having those conversations, looking at results like this, looking at how students are responding to just classroom-based activities, things that teachers are asking them to do. What's the quality of writing look like? What are the strengths and what are the areas of improvement? So we're really trying to identify those things, and then this is one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only thing that we look at. I've said this before. If we wanted to just raise ACT scores, there could be a lot of things that we could do to just target that. But I've always felt that it was the position of the board that that's not just what we're about. We're about providing quality opportunities for them in lots of areas, and broadening their horizons in all of these areas, and providing opportunities for them beyond just that. So there are some things that we've discussed, Mr. Galladay and I, about possibly for kids who want to improve that ACT score, and maybe are looking at a 4-year track, or to do some things where there might be some extra study prep, or some Saturday type things that kids could come in and do some of those things that they wanted to, but not something that we would mandate or require it for anybody, but just make it an option. We have access to Onto College too, which is the old John Baylor test prep materials that is specifically ACT aligned, so all high school students have access to those materials also. And then pre-ACT, it's part of the state contract. There was 2 choices the district has. You can administer the pre-ACT. We have a choice to give it in the fall or the spring of their 10th grade year. We've always chose the fall because it gives us a little bit extra time to look at that information and say, okay, and it gives students a little more time to look at the information. It gives them a range. It'll say, if you took the ACT, a year from now, here's this range of scores that you might, if you stay on track where you're at, this is kind of what we would predict your ACT score to be. So we felt that the earlier we get that back to families and back to kids, the better off they have, more opportunity to prepare. They do also offer some ACT prep materials that we did utilize those back in like 2017-18, but went away from that shortly after. It was a lot of redundancy with our Onto College things, so there wasn't any really need to use that. So we switched over and elect to use the pre-ACT. It's the same administration, paper, pencil, and then the classroom teachers utilize that. So this is that information over that same time period. I mean, you'll see growth or pretty steady, or pretty steady improvement across that time. Maximum score on the pre-ACT is a 35, so not a 36 like ACT. But. And again, this is all 10th graders. Obviously, we have policy that states, if the parent wants to opt out of those testing procedures, they can contact, administration and go through that process. We usually just have a conversation about, why, and talk about, just making sure that it's a good decision, that everybody has all the right information, and then we get, some written confirmation that that's the choice, and then we go from there.
So, Josh, I'm looking at these here. So the average for science is 20.1, 20.6, 20.3, okay? For 17, 18, 18, obviously COVID year is gone. Okay, then I go down to, you look at then the math, we're 19, 20, 20, and then you look at, is there any correlation that you see that why those two are much higher than the reading? Is it curriculum, or are we changing, because science is science, you shouldn't be changing much higher than reading. Are we changing curriculums that that we think is great because everybody says it's great?
So
and actually not doing what it's intended to do?
At the high school?
No, at the elementary and middle school, because that's where it starts, right?
It is, but so the information that we have here would not be influenced by any of the changes, I guess, that we've made at the elementary. I mean, obviously, yeah, it wouldn't be made, wouldn't
Did we make any math changes in the last 5 years at the younger number? So that would affect any of the high school kids right now?
No. Not yet. We haven't seen that yet. Okay. In several years, we will see that.
I'll be curious of that. Any math I don't like.
Josh, other things? Other questions for Josh? All right, thank you, Josh. Vernon?
What else you want from me?
What's that? Just anything with your report?
No, I think, I've already got my report, but, that was it, so.
All right. I'm struggling with my computer here. It keeps dying on me.
I'll go here real quick while you catch up. I don't have anything written. Most of what I'm going to talk about is down in the action items as far as building stuff, as far as policy, and then an action item we have on a personnel matter. The only thing that I would share is negotiations is about to start up. By statute, we have to start by November 1st with the negotiation committee, just like we do every other year. I will be getting information out. I've got a raise ready to go. I just need to sit down with WEA and then we'll get that process started.
Okay. Any questions for Brandon? All right, moving on. Communications, I don't see anything. Next item is audience comments. Anything? Right?
I just have a quick comment. On August 15th, I attended the monthly school board meeting and made a public comment regarding surveys/screenings. There was some confusion at the meeting as to what exactly I was talking about, so Brandon asked that we set up a time to get together to discuss my concerns. Brandon scheduled a meeting and included Josh Schneider on August 26th, where they graciously spent an entire hour with me explaining our district's current process of screening all K through 8 students twice a year, fall and spring. And I asked if parents were notified of these screenings and was informed that they've gone back and forth on it, but that no, there's no notification before the screenings take place. From attending State Board of Education meetings, I know this has been a hot topic of concern for parents, as it is an option for the parents to opt their child out if they do not want their child screened. There are pros and cons to screenings, that's a whole nother topic, But my concern has always been that it's done without the parents' knowledge and that data is stored by companies who have been breached. In fact, the one that Wahoo Public Schools used, Illuminate Education, was breached this past March. And there's class action lawsuits against them in 7 states, not Nebraska. In our handbooks, it states the district will engage in academic testing and may utilize social and emotional behavior screeners. Sadly, as a parent, I have to admit, for many years, I just signed the handbook, took it back to the school because I didn't really know what it was saying. In our meeting where we met on the 26th, we discussed sending a letter home to parents prior to the screening so that parents would be aware that it was going to happen and they could ask questions if they had any, or opt their child out if they didn't want their child to take it. But the fall screening came and went, and no letters were sent out. At the board meeting, there were 4 board members present. I think there were 2 absent that day. And nobody seemed to know anything about these screenings/surveys. I call them surveys, they call them screeners. Renee did ask if the board could get sample questions of what was being asked, and I'm just curious, has that happened? I'm still hopeful that these letters can precede the spring screening, just as an attempt of transparency with the parents.
Other comments? Okay. Brandon or Josh, anything to add to that there?
Oh, and I had shared this with Di earlier. I had worked on an assessment. It's like a program or brochure that lists all of the assessments that we give across the district with at each building level, so elementary, middle school, high school. Shares district policy with regards to that with those practices. And then is something that I will share out or have. Now I'm wondering if I did share that out with you. But it's just a collection of all the reading, math, etc. Any assessment that we give, just so that, like Di said, for the sake of transparency, that families are specifically aware of every single thing that we're administering.
Okay. Thank you. Board committee reports. All right, moving on to the action items. First item is the facility projects update. Nothing there specifically?
No, BVH continues to work. It's a lot of fine tuning at this point, trying to come up with bid documents. There wouldn't be any changes to anything that you guys have seen previously. So they're going to continue plugging away on that.
Okay. Next item is discuss, consider, and take any action in awarding the bid for the elementary school chiller upgrade.
Yeah, so you remember the bid went out originally, but we're using ESSER dollars for it. There's a specific process that needs to be used. We re-let those bids out. BDH and SES helped run the process. I believe there were 3 respondents to the bid, and the low reasonable bid that can fulfill our duties was MCL, so the recommendation was to award that bid to MCL. I know Brian's here tonight if anybody has questions, whether it's regarding the chiller upgrade or the project as a whole. Eric is here from SES. If you've got any questions on that, as well.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, just recap where how they came in, and just the new numbers, what we budgeted for now, what we're actually at.
For the chiller?
Yeah.
So our number was 327, 322, close to our first number. Same subs responded to us. I think we had 1 new mechanical that bid. The next numbers, which I wrote down from the public opening, was Johnson Controls at 394, 779, and then Hayes Mechanical at 439. Even. So the process of collecting our bids was the same. We go out to whoever wants to respond to us, collect those bids, pile them up, and present the number to you guys.
placeholder that was much larger than that originally. for
That
the-
number included the Johnson controls upgrades. So
and
it was
this
like
number-
5 something, and that included the direct contract that you'll have with Johnson Controls on just the controls package.
Okay, so-
I think you're talking more from a budget standpoint.
Correct,
I thought we had
like $1 million.
budget like $1 million for this.
Well, I know there's $1 million available. I don't know what our budget, I don't think we ever really budgeted, but we just knew there was $1 million available. And then our first go around, we thought 500 to 600 was gonna look pretty good with our number plus Johnson Controls. And then you can do the math. I don't know what Johnson Controls ended up being, that number, but,
I don't
or was
know
that 327 and then plus
I don't know that I've
theirs?
seen the hard number, I'm guessing somewhere in the 170 range.
Yeah, that's what I think it's right around there. So.
Yeah, the original MCL placeholder was $1 million, and I think that was based both on the knowledge of the funds available, but also the scope started out quite a bit larger and then came down. But that's going into the first bid, that was the number allocated, and I know we discussed that.
And help me understand the first number before we went back through the process to advertise in accordance with the ESSER fund requirements.
Mhm.
That number was something more than 327, I think that's what you're alluding to, but help me understand that. What was that number that was presented to the school board prior to saying, okay, now we're gonna go back and rebid this? And what is the difference between, not only dollar, the numeric difference between that and this 327, but the difference in what's included in the number?
So that includes the exact same scope. I don't think we hit a hard number. We knew right where the bids were coming in, where we were gonna be, but never put general conditions fee, anything like that full in. So I think the number we probably shared was around 400.
Now, wouldn't the general conditions and so forth make that number go up, not down?
They would. So we elected to not include any fee or general conditions on our bid.
All on the 327.
So
I
that's
got you. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I was thinking of that backwards.
Are things coming in lower? I mean, is this a good sign for our actual
The
renovation
good sign is
here?
the space and time before we bid it, and we didn't get any escalations when we saw the numbers twice.
I'm talking about for the high school.
It's
What
leveled
is the-
off a little bit. We know we were surprised by that aluminum 30% increase. That's stuff that you don't even see coming, could drop at any time. That was for like the glazing, and that, I think we shared that last time. There was a 30% material increase in aluminum on certain systems. So we worked with BVH to kind of limit the amount of glass a little bit more, but mechanical's still climbing a little bit, not as much as it used to be. I think things are leveling off better than it has in the last year or two, but still climbing as a whole. It's not, we're not seeing things trending back to pre-COVID years.
So, but just to clarify, when you're saying climbing, it's, you've already have contingency built in for that climb?
Correct.
Yeah. Not-
So the
not
new
climbing.
budget that we have still, it's came out 900,000 in design contingency, and we're getting towards the end, where hopefully we've almost realized all that we would with that money. And we're still carrying, I think, 1.5 in escalation, which has come down a little bit. I think that's only 6%, but.
How far are we away from the GMP proposal?
We'd like to see the documents.
Yeah, no.
That was
of
one
course.
question that I had for you guys, if you had a timing or a preference of when you'd want to see a GMP number. We're getting closer with BVH. We haven't seen a newer set of documents lately to compare our last budgets with.
When are they done with construction documents?
November 21st.
So we hit a print set this week.
Did you?
Friday,
Okay.
Friday, and then, yeah, no, and we are on schedule, I checked, we are all on schedule for November
11/21,
final.
yeah.
So what kind of a turnaround then do you need to finalize pricing, get your bids in, and get a GMP proposal? done?
January, just because of the holiday, I mean, November 21st, we can get it out, go right up against Thanksgiving, then you have the Thanksgiving between Christmas gap, which is an ideal to get numbers back themselves, but there's enough time there that all should be able to do it. come first of the year, we're putting numbers together, presenting to you, mid-January.
And remind me when we're targeting to actually start construction.
March.
Okay, other questions from the board? Is there a motion to award the chiller upgrade project to NCL at a cost not to exceed $327,322? So moved. Got a motion, a second, a third, Chris, take your pick.
I'm gonna go with Mike and Brett.
All right.
Alex.
All right, got a motion, a second, any further discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Mike,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Laura. Yes. Alex.
Yes.
Renee. Yes. Rob.
Yes. All right, thank you. Next item is discuss, consider taking any action regarding policy review and adoption. A couple different things there. but-
Yeah, we got a couple of resolutions to consider. As I've shared in the past, going to one firm to shore up our policy and make sure everything is aligned and in order. I'm a big fan of it at this point. I think it's going to be well worth our time. The first resolution here is a conflicting policies resolution. Essentially, it's delayed implementation. So what we'll do over the course of the school year is we will start considering through policy committee and then through the board, considering chapters of policy at a time. But those will not be implemented and enforced until the board dictates such. So we will have a chapter of policies come before you that you can approve or disapprove, however you want to do it. Let's say you approve it, it is not enforced until sometime in the future, probably right before next school year, that we say, okay, we're essentially flipping the switch. This is our new policy book, these are our new policies, these are enforced at this time. Does that make sense? So that is what the first, and we don't have to read the resolution word for word, I won't have to if you want me to, but that is what the resolution states in the purpose of it.
Do we anticipate major changes? And is this largely a cleanup effort or, and a true up, given that different policies were written by different law firms? Do we anticipate substantive changes?
I don't anticipate big changes. I anticipate streamlining and cleaning up some places. For the most part, our policies that we have, I know the policies that we have those in place. This is going to be operational. This is going to be what dictates how the board operates. It's just going to be much cleaner than pulling from an NASB or from Perry or from KSB or whatever sources we've had at this point. So I don't think you'll see a huge change because you're going to be able to make the policy say what you want it to say. It's just going to be much more organized and well worded.
Okay, do you want to speak to the other one as well before we take action on
I
it?
sure can. The second one is a resolution removing two reading requirement. This would be enforced going forward from this point in which we do not have to have a two reading requirement. In the past, I brought before you any changes that I'd recommend. I'd go through it and then we'd read through it at the next meeting and we'd approve it. We have the ability to do it on one reading as opposed to two from this point forward, whether it's the new policies that we're implementing or whether it's changes that we make sometime in the future.
What was the reason that they were had to read? Was it just an opportunity for people to hear it the first time that wanted to come to the next meeting and talk? And that just seems.
I don't know the absolute answer to that. I think it was common practice. Whether it was required or not, I can't answer.
I like the two readings. I mean, honestly, the ability to hear it, discuss it, decide if we need to make changes, think about it, and then come back and vote versus trying to do that all in one meeting does not feel like it's the most efficient way, but I'm not sure it's the most effective way to go about policy adoption.
And my counter to that is I would still go forward with this. It doesn't say that you can't do two readings. It says that you have the option of it. And what I'm thinking of is if we get a session in the legislature with an emergency clause to implement, we may not have time for two readings before policy has to be in place.
Which is kind of what they refer to in the second paragraph of that policy, just in regards to.
So by doing away with the 2 reading, we could still.
It gives you the option.
We can still say, okay, let's make these
If you want to
changes.
stick to the 2 reading, that is absolutely your prerogative.
So
I
would it
just,
take a vote to stick to the 2 reading?
what's that?
Would it take a vote to stick to the 2 reading?
No, it'd be case by case after this one. Granted, this we think should be 2 reads, let's do 2 for board president at the time.
Or, as a compromise, could we have something where we leave the 2 reading in place except in the event, you know, of some sort of an emergency policy that needs to be enacted? I guess I'd rather leave the 2 readings as the default and carve out an exception as opposed to getting rid of it because there might be an exception at some point in the future.
Let me go through our policy book, our current policy book, and see if we have anything absolutely within that. And see if there's a compromise, if that's what you guys want.
I like that.
I can do that.
That I think you would actually go the other way from what Renee was saying, is actually go to waive the 2 reading requirement. But as a matter of practice, if we wanted to do it as we've done in the last policy review, we bring it up in the communication part of the agenda, but then the next meeting it comes in the action item, which becomes the second reading, in essence of that.
And I guess it would change it to words, what difference does it make if it takes us 2 meetings to adopt it?
Unless it's an emergency.
Right, it's just, it allows a more thoughtful process. From my perspective, it allows a more thoughtful process.
I think one thought that I would have, in the time that I've been on the school board, I can't remember. I'm not saying there hasn't been one, but I don't recall a time when we had to have an emergency in action, an emergency clause attached to a policy to say, no, this is right now. I don't even know if we thought we had that power, but I don't ever remember that happening. But if we did have that situation, we could make the determination of whether or not it's an emergency. My opinion might be different than somebody else's, or somebody in the audience may have, or in the community within the district may have a different opinion. And if we're held to that standard, then we're litigating on, we could potentially be litigating on whether something is an emergency or not. So I would probably, I mean, I don't have a huge, strong opinion on this, but I would probably lean towards waiving the requirement of implementing the practice of continuing to read the first time and then adopt the second time, like we did with the most recent policy adoptions that we did. I mean, it wasn't even in the action items the first time, it was just in, then you had an item for policy review in the information. Do that, and then adopt the next one. That way there's no discussion about whether or not something meets the standard of emergency if you're going to be in that situation. But again, I'm also not going to stand super hard on this and say it has to be this way, because I don't know. Probably fearful.
Well, the second one doesn't need to be approved tonight. We can approve the first of the 2. Because I don't want to waive it. I'm with Renee on that, think about it when I saw it. What's it gonna, it gives opportunities to look at it, it gives anybody that has, maybe watching or right here, a chance to look at it, ask questions. Unless it's like you just said, it's something that pandemic related that we have to, but we could call a special meeting for that anyway, couldn't we? If that was something so major that we had to do, we could have a meeting within 7 days, right?
Well, you still have to.
Post it, right, but how many days it takes to post it to have a meeting?
I think it's 10.
Yeah.
In order to get it in the newspaper like we do.
And just to clarify emergency, you had said the emergency clause. I was thinking in the event of legislation with the emergency clause that needed to be enacted before we could get through the process of 2 readings. That's how I was defining emergency. I meant emergency clause in legislation. How many times has that happened in the last 20 years?
I can't answer that off the top of my head.
10 years?
not off the top of my head. I
Has
can't
it ever
tell you.
happened here?
I won't say that.
Rob, do you remember
We,
that one?
we took our, there's been times where I didn't realize we had this option, and we went through our 2 readings because that's what we've always done, even though it was enacted after the time that it was supposed to be enforced. So I know that has happened, I can't tell you how many times.
Well, how about if we make this a first reading, we have to take no action, and then second meeting, we can decide whether or not we want to do this. In the meantime, if you would maybe dig a little deeper with our attorneys in regards to the pros and cons versus just what's simply stated in the policy. Fair enough? As to the delayed policy implementation resolution, any concerns with that, questions, otherwise a motion to approve?
Rob,
Right,
one
sure.
other comments on the moving this 2 reading requirement. You know, one of the other things I think at the municipality level, they can actually take a vote to waive the second reading. You know, that's something we could do too as a compromise to say, okay, let's vote at this meeting to waive it as opposed to waiving it across the board.
Yeah.
So that might be an option.
And then it can be at the board's discretion, and then you don't run
Correct.
into an interpretation of whether or not something
Yes.
triggers to require. I could be supportive of that,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then if we have a lot of feedback from the public and it's clear that we probably need to have it as the second time.
Then we could, yeah, if it's a non-issue, it's something we simply have to implement, we can waive the second reading, it becomes effective immediately.
Right.
If not, yeah, you're right, municipalities do that with some frequency, including at the meeting I was at last weekend, or last Thursday, Tuesday. So, okay, can you look into that? All right. Delayed policy implementation resolution, is there a motion to approve that? This is basically, we flip the switch after we get done with all of them, not piecemeal them.
Second.
Motion is second, further discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Brett? Laura? Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Rob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And just for clarification, that flipping of the switch is in the form of a resolution that we'll have somewhere down the line.
Yep. Okay, next item is Mr. Privet's resignation.
Yep, we have a letter of resignation there from Mr. Privet. He interviewed and was offered and accepted a job at ESU. It's going to be specifically high ability learner HAL stuff with training, with kids, with teachers, with curriculum. He felt like it was in his wheelhouse and something he was ready to do. And so he is going to take advantage of that opportunity.
Is there a motion to approve with regrets the resignation of Mr. Privet?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Any second? Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, that's at the end of the school year.
End of the school year, yep.
So,
Correct.
okay.
All right, any other discussion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Mike?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Laura? Alex?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And this was gonna be the other part of my report here is I feel like we do a really good job in the school district operating efficiently as far as FTE. When you look at our FTE equivalency of teachers compared to other districts our size, I would say we're in the conservative realm, a smaller number. And so something that we've already started talking about is kind of moving pieces. How do we utilize FTE in the most efficient, effective manner for the district, including like this open teaching position? Do we add it back as is and keep a part-time at the elementary? Do you move the full-time down the elementary and have a part-time up here? You just have one media and then you have something else that we utilize that FTE that Dave takes for something else. We constantly do that as pieces and parts move. So it's something we've already started discussing, it's something we'll continue to discuss. We'll have a recommendation at some point in time, and that's going to come in the form of advertisement for a new position. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk.
Okay, items for the next regular meeting. Second reading of a policy, potentially waive second reading. Anything else? I'm sure we'll have a building update.
Should have a building
Other
update.
action to take there.
Potentially a negotiation.
Okay.
Will we have any other academic measures, anything to report on? John's
I won't have anything updated by then, but,
As Josh and I talked about it,
my hope would be that perhaps we can do an October ACT, a January, that would give a status of the district, which is it's quite a bit of information, and then a growth focus spring report that'll show historically fall to the spring and school year.
What about
Yeah.
math testing? I mean, can you
It
report
would
on math testing?
include all of that. I mean, we can,
All of that.
we have all of that information.
Okay, other items? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? All in favor? Aye? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
thanks, guys.